Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Real, a Star Wars podcast. It is Cinco de Mayo today, Revenge of the 5th, if you will, and I'm here with Preston. Preston, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Good,
we had
good to hear.
a big holiday yesterday.
We sure did. It's pretty much the Christmas of the Star Wars fanboys, if you ask me.
Yeah.
May the 4th be with you, and we hope that the 4th was with you all. We had to postpone our recording a little bit, just so we didn't have to do back-to-back days with the two episodes that came out over the weekend. So, but yeah, we're here now, and I hope we had a good May 4th. How did yours go? Did you do anything special for it?
Just watched a bunch of Star Wars. That's basically
good.
It. And worked.
It's kind of a bummer year because not only did it fall on a Monday, which, you know, most people still have to work, but it also fell during the whole coronavirus shutdown. So there wasn't a whole lot going on.
Yeah.
What did you end up watching yesterday to celebrate?
Well, obviously the newest episodes of the Clone Wars.
Oh, of course.
Of course. And then I also watched the Star Wars show episode, which was I think it came out a couple days ago, but it had some really great stuff in there.
Yeah, is that the one you're talking about with the interview with Dave Filoni, right?
Yep, Dave Filoni and George Lucas. I love that interview. It was really good.
It was a really good interview. Yeah, there were some fun stories in there. It's interesting to hear how well he understands George and George's vision of Star Wars.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
Well, and I think the thing that I pulled away from that, or took away from that, the most is that when they went into the Clone Wars, they didn't see this as like, oh, let's just throw something out there just to give people more Star Wars so that we can make more money. It was very much like George Lucas made sure that Dave Filoni knew that this is just as much Star Wars as the movies. Yeah. And that they need to think about it like that.
And yeah, didn't he say something along the lines of he approaches everything like a movie?
Mm-hmm.
Like
it's all like
every
a feature.
episode, every episode it was a feature to them.
Yeah,
and that's how they approached it. And it seems like I don't know what their funding was like because I'm pretty sure everything was funded through Lucasfilm and not through Cartoon Network. So it seemed like George was okay to just put a bunch of money and hours into something until it was exactly what he wanted. Which I thought that was kind of a cool way of doing it. A lot of people are just like, okay, let's see if we can get this episode out to the network this week. Well,
and that's what I feel like. I feel like we do this a lot, and we kind of crap on the Disney Star Wars stuff. But Rebels did a great job of doing that as well, where like they really thought about it. But then I feel like the newest stuff. I know that you talked about those little shorts. Mm-hmm. Those definitely felt like a project just to kind of get out there, even though they're fun and they're nice, but they did feel a little bit like that. And then the newest, I don't even remember what the new animated series is called.
Resistance.
Resistance, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like they're going into that knowing it's a cartoon, not thinking of it as a Star Wars series. It's more of like, let's get a kid's cartoon out there.
Yeah, and I haven't watched enough of it to fully judge it, but you're right. I don't think... I mean, it was spearheaded by Dave Filoni, but I don't think he put as much thought and effort into it. He kind of let other creatives take control. But you're right. I don't think it was meant to be as groundbreaking as the Clone Wars was to move canon forward. But in my opinion, it doesn't have to be. And the reason I say that is because when Clone Wars started in 2008... that was it. That was the only Star Wars coming out. It was the only Star Wars we thought we would ever get left. And so, to me, it made sense to put a lot of time and effort and respect into it. Where now we get so much Star Wars that I feel like some of these projects, you don't have to, go full 100% with everybody on board. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't think Kathleen Kennedy has any idea what's going on over at the Star Wars Resistance. She's just like, you guys do your thing. Maybe they're trying really hard for those people, but I think they're saving their top guns like Filoni and Favreau and Taika Waititi, which we'll talk about. JJ, which, you might like him or you might not after seeing episode 9, but they're using those big guns for, the features and the live action television. So to me, I'm okay with Resistance being here's a fun thing for your kids to enjoy. But I do really appreciate that Clone Wars, they put a lot of time and effort into making something beautiful that fits in the canon so well. And it really does after these last 4 episodes that we saw.
Well, and it made it really, in my opinion, it made the prequels good, first off.
Yeah, for sure.
The prequels wouldn't be nearly as loved or as good if I didn't watch the prequels and also know a lot of the stuff that's going on in between those movies. Whereas, like, I feel like now they do have a lot of in between content that they're putting out, but it doesn't make the new trilogy as good because it's a lot of books and comic books. Whereas, like, this Clone Wars was a massive undertaking, a massive project that really fleshed out a whole timeline. It's pretty awesome.
And to me, it has something to say. So I'll preface this by saying I'm a prequel fan. Mm-hmm. I love the prequels. I don't love them as much as the originals. Big shocker there, right? Everyone loves the originals the most. But to me, the originals didn't need really any of that filler stuff. Not that the prequels did. Not that I came out of episode 3... I was a teenager at the time, but not that I came out and was like, oh man, I wish I had more supplemental material to fill in the gaps. I didn't think that. But what it gained so much from the Clone Wars series because it was a little less complete, or not a little less complete, but it just wasn't quite as satisfying as the originals were. Like, for example, one thing I did to help celebrate Star Wars Day yesterday is I watched Revenge of the Sith because I had just watched the Clone Wars finale, and I was like, okay, now I want to watch Revenge of the Sith. And as I watched Hayden Christensen, who I know is an incredible actor, but he just didn't bring it for me as Anakin personally. I would like re-say his lines that he would deliver in Matt Lautner's voice from the Clone Wars. And I'm like, okay, I'm trying to picture these scenes as Clone Wars Anakin, who I know Anakin to be from the Clone Wars, and it gave it so much more weight and gravitas. Like, I was like, oh, this is so sad to watch him go through this because I had just watched 7 seasons of this guy go through the Clone Wars for nothing.
Yeah.
Like, just to be a pawn to this grand puppet master scheme.
Well, and let me put another little thought on that. I don't remember where I heard this, but I feel like I've heard a quote from George Lucas saying that because of technology constraints, he had to keep the original trilogy fairly tight in its focus and narrow in its focus. So that means that you just have basically like Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, and then you have a couple supplementals like Lando, and there's really not a ton of characters, and it's very focused on like this tight knit group of people, and then there's like one big bad guy. Whereas when he finally got that technology and he was going to make the prequels, he made it much bigger, which means that he had a lot more characters, and he had the bad guys weren't just like, oh, big bad guy that's oppressing the entire galaxy. It's like sneaky, and you got like Grievous and Dooku with kind of complex backstories and motivations and complex systems. And so in the 3 movies, I think they suffered a little bit from that broadening of the scope, but that allowed for a lot of filler material to be incredible in the Clone Wars. Whereas I think the original trilogy, you can't really fill in the gaps in between those films as effectively, because what are you going to talk about? Like what they did for that month in between the 2 movies, and you're just looking at basically the same characters.
Right. There's not much of a gap, and I feel like that's why a lot of the storytelling we get in that era is more like scum and villainy, or like this is what people were doing during this that doesn't necessarily affect the actual story, or it's things of the birth of the rebellion. I feel like we get birth of the rebellion a lot in the supplementary material for the Civil War. But I agree with you. It's almost as if the prequels were a little too big for their britches. I noticed that when rewatching Revenge of the Sith again yesterday, because I made this comment to my wife now that I'm studying film. I was baffled, and I didn't notice this the first time I saw it, or the first 10 times I saw it, was how many cuts it makes in the first 2 acts of the movie. It's like, this happens here, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. And there were very few scenes that gave you some time to breathe. The first time you really get time to breathe is the the scene where he's at the opera and, you know, he gets things explained to him a little bit by Palpatine.
Yeah.
That awesome scene. But everything else is just like, this has to happen, this has to happen. Like, everything was just kind of like lining up. It didn't start that way. Obviously, that big battle at the beginning was quite a long scene. But after everything there, it was like bounced from location to location to location to give you the info you need. I almost feel like the prequels could have benefited from being a 10 episode, or not even 10 episode. Like, you could have done it in 5 seasons.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you got 7 seasons of the Clone Wars. Like, you could have told that whole story of the prequels from, 9-year-old Anakin to Darth Vader. You could have done that in 10 seasons with 10-hour-long episodes.
Yeah, well, I think the conclusion that you just came to is that the Clone Wars are the prequels and that the films are actually supplemental material.
Sorry, you were breaking in there. What were you saying? You said the clones or the Clone Wars was more the story and the films are the supplemental material?
Yep. I think that's the conclusion that you just came to, is that the Clone Wars is the actual prequels, and that the movies are really just the fill-ins for the major plot points. But like I really think that the original trilogy is best in a film format, and the prequels are best in a segmented format, so you can look at all the different angles and see all those different characters in their own as the star of their own episode, without having to force it into a quick cutting film.
I full-heartedly agree with you there. I think you're right. I think you hit the nail on the coffin. You heard it here first, folks. Well, maybe, I don't know. You might have heard it other places. We don't have ears everywhere, but that's a good point that I didn't even realize I was making. Yeah. I'm glad you connected that.
Now we just need to figure.
That's I have to sit on that for a little bit.
Yeah. There you go.
And we haven't even gotten into the news yet. We're still talking about our Star Wars Day adventures.
Yeah. Well, we need to talk about the news real quick, and then get into the last 2 episodes of the Clone Wars. It's over. It's done.
It's done. Yeah, I'm excited to get into it. Real quick, I'm just going to recap what I did yesterday. As I said, I watched Revenge of the Sith. I watched episode 9 again, which, it was episode 9. I don't have any change of feelings towards it. It's one of those movies that I'm like, yeah, I like it. It's part of Star Wars. Mm-hmm. I'll watch it from time to time. And then I did. Here we are in Utah. The stay-at-home orders have been lifted, and they're encouraging people to. Well, not necessarily encouraging, but they're telling people if you need to go out and go shopping again, you're more than welcome to. Just keep masks and gloves on. So me and my wife got masked up and went and did some Star Wars shopping. And I grabbed me some fun things. So you can check out what I call my Star Wars Day haul on our Instagram at Beyond the Real on Instagram, where we just did our first giveaway for our General Kenobi Black Series. So
did you choose
just want to shout out? I did. I chose the winner today. So she, a lucky woman from Idaho, I believe. Oh. So I'm going to send that out to her tomorrow. But thanks for everyone who participated in that. If you guys listen to our podcast as well as follow us on Instagram, thanks for the getting on board of the contest. Got us some more subscribers and some more followers on Instagram.
I still think it's unfair that I was disqualified from participating.
Yeah, sorry about that. My wife said the same thing. She entered and she was like, "Oh, can I win it?" I was like, "Yeah, that's going to bode over well. Just give it to my wife."
Thanks for all the
but we chose randomly, so thanks again for everyone that was part of that. So that was pretty much my fun Star Wars 4th.
Well, and you should have told me that you're going out Star Wars shopping. I would have given you some items to pick up.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about it.
Here's the thing: I didn't get any of the May the 4th items that were put out. Like, I went to Target and Walmart, and none of them had any Star Wars stuff out. Like, it was really sad. So I didn't get any of the 40th anniversary ESB stuff or anything. What I did is I went, besides the Baby Yoda, which I showed you,
yeah.
the little Baby Yoda toy. So, but I went to this place. I'm going to do a shout out. It's not a paid sponsorship, but shout out to Rogue Toys in West Jordan, Utah. I think they're based out of Las Vegas, if I'm not mistaken. But I just discovered them through the Utah Star Wars fan community on Facebook, and they're a pretty awesome place. I got some older stuff and some newer stuff, so I like collecting a little bit more of the classic figures than I do like buying the new stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. I'm gonna have to check them out.
Well, let's do it. Let's break into the news. Enough about our week and our Star Wars Day celebrations. We'll break into the news, but real quick, I do want to say to anyone listening, tell us about what you did for Star Wars Day. We're interested in what your traditions are, if you have any, or what your fun adventures were. So you can tweet us at BTR Star Wars on Twitter, or even on Facebook. You can reach out to us there. And one thing I will add, which we haven't said on the show before, is you are welcome to contact us through email as well. You can email us at beyondtherealpod@gmail.com at any time. So, well, let's do this. Let's go ahead and break into the news. Probably go ahead and play our intro here, seeing that we didn't leave a space for it at the beginning, which we always do. So go ahead and punch that.
Joey, punch it. Punch it.
Punch it!
Punch it.
Punch it!
All right, and we are here to talk about the news.
Do I get to break the first story?
Yeah, go ahead and break it down.
Well, just because I'm the one that put it on our outline, so I'm going to take credit for it. So, big news. We talked about it last week of the rumors that Taika Waititi would be directing something in the Star Wars universe. And this week it was officially announced that he is going to be directing a full-fledged film, which is super exciting.
So excited for that. Yeah. When I saw this, so I saw it on Instagram first. A couple of people were posting it, and it was just some like Star Wars fan accounts, right? So I was like, that's not true. This is a May 4th, wishful news. And then I saw it on Twitter from the official Star Wars. I was like, okay, that has some gravitas to it, or has some weight. And then I saw Taika Waititi post it, and I was like, all right, yeah, this is totally happening, obviously. So I was ecstatic.
My brain's kind of like going in overdrive. What's he going to be doing? What's this going to be about? What era is this going to fall into? And all those questions are kind of floating around now. And I'm thinking, if I have to put a guess out there, which I don't, I mean, no one's forcing me to, but
I'm forcing you to.
Okay.
You better put a guess out.
I guess my hope is I really would like to see, because my thought is if he's just getting on board with this right now, that means we're probably like a year and a half at least out from it, if not further. So I'm hoping that right now we're ramping up with the whole High Republic stuff, with novels and comic books. Maybe we'll get a film from Taika Waititi in that era. That'll be like the first film of that era.
That's what I was kind of thinking too. One thing that was interesting to me, so one thing I did as well yesterday for May the 4th is I watched the first episode of the Mandalorian documentary series. And they spent some time with each director talking about their different styles and what they brought to Star Wars. It was really, really fun to watch. If you haven't checked that out, I'd suggest going ahead and checking that out on Disney Plus to anyone who hasn't. But when they were talking about Taika, he made a joke about Jon Favreau coming to set and kind of making sure he stayed in his lane. Because Taika likes to get really outside of the box in his filmmaking. I've been watching all of What We Do in the Shadows, which he is the executive producer on, so I don't know if he has his hand in much of it these days, but watching that What We Do in the Shadows TV series, because he directed and starred in the original film. And it is wild, man. It just it makes me laugh so much. So I'm so excited to see that translated into Star Wars. But where he says, Jon Favreau was there to make sure he stayed in his lanes, I wonder if they would give him something like New Republic, right? Or totally different than what we've ever seen in the Star Wars, to give Taika that more free range, to make something more like Ragnarok, something a little bit more out there, maybe slightly more silly. I mean, he knows how to do comedy, but yet stay on target, like we saw in the last episode of The Mandalorian. And
in Jojo Rabbit, I think that was a good mix of humor and serious topics.
Exactly. Jojo Rabbit was a good mix of serious and comedy. So I wonder if they're going to give him something to play that's completely free without giving him any restraints of, oh, okay, here are the canon moments in the universe. Like, either far in the future or, like you said, in the New Republic era, or far enough back. But I don't see Taika as the type of person to maybe go ahead and read all the canon, right? So, like, if they're coming out with a bunch of High Republic books and comics, I don't see him sitting down and reading all those in order to make sure his script aligns with it.
Right.
So I almost wonder if they do something there, it would be completely, like, maybe same era, but completely different part of the galaxy.
Yeah.
Or, like, way in the future. So
that would be interesting.
Or we could be completely wrong and he's doing episode 7.5 and it's for the 45 minutes between episode 7 and 8.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be in real time. It's all going to be one shot. It's going to be very artistic. It's going to be like the 1917 of Star Wars.
Exactly. It's going to be them leaving Jakar and the brief moments as Rey is handing the lightsaber to, which we already saw, so we can't even get there.
Nope.
Like, there's nothing to see.
You did touch on another piece of news, which is that documentary episode, I guess. Are they going to make more episodes of that?
They are. They said it was going to be an 8-episode series, and so
that's the news. Is that the first episode is out now?
Yeah, exactly. And I do want to vent about that a little bit because I understand putting out The Mandalorian week to week, right?
Yep.
It gives people something to talk about. It keeps people from, subscribing to Disney Plus, watching it all, and then unsubscribing or whatever. So I understand that for the Clone Wars. I understand that for Mandalorian. But I don't understand why they're doing it for a documentary series. Like, I was really excited to just pop my popcorn, sit down, and watch 8 episodes of a documentary series, for Star Wars, all on Star Wars Day. But instead, they're releasing it week to week. Like, I feel that's unnecessary.
Yeah, and to me, documentaries are a 2-hour experience. Documentaries typically, for me, aren't something I want to come back to week. It's something I want to, like, learn about and then walk away from.
Right. And diehards like us, we're going to have an easy time watching this week to week because, it's like, oh, I want to learn more about this thing I am super interested in all the time.
Yep.
But I feel like for your average Joe, Tiger King was the biggest thing in documentaries during quarantine, and I loved it. Like, I was hooked to it, but I don't think I would have watched it week to week. If I'd have watched the first episode and they're like, okay, come back next Friday, and I'm like, nah, that's fine.
Yep. On a side note, I have a coworker who worked for Carol Baskin for 12 years.
No way.
Yeah.
What?
And this coworker of mine, so she was actually a recruiter because it's all volunteer, if you remember from the documentary. She was a recruiter for them for 12 years. Yeah. And I wasn't invited to this birthday party, but they had a virtual birthday party for my coworker a couple weeks ago, and Carol Baskin actually attended. Really? Yeah.
Okay, we might have to do. It's not Star Wars, but we might have to do like a, side Tiger King interview. Man, I would have so many questions for her.
Yeah.
Wow. Have you talked to this coworker much about it? Like, does she believe that Carol killed her husband?
I'm a little bit hesitant to talk to her directly about it, but she has told me that they're all crazy, and that's part of the reason why she left. Was it was so crazy.
I bet anyone who knows this though is like blowing her up though, and just being like, "Do you think Carol killed her husband? Like what? Yeah. Oh man, that's intense stuff."
So it's like the 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever that is. Like someone who knows someone who worked with her.
Yeah, you're pretty high on the Carol Baskin scale.
I am.
Yeah.
Like if I needed to, I could find a way to get in contact with her.
That's crazy. Well, welcome to Beyond the Real, a
Tiger King podcast.
Tiger King podcast. I'd do it. I'd talk about Tiger King for an hour each week.
I could
for about 2 weeks.
Yeah, maybe we can have a standalone episode that we like is outside of the normal. Maybe if it's a slow news week, we can have a Tiger King episode.
Well, And I do want to put this out there to the ether, if you will.
Yeah, because that's
Beyond
the
the
only
Real
people
was
we're
actually
talking to right now.
yeah. Beyond the Real was supposed to be a multiple fandom podcast and YouTube channel. I do have some other people that have other interests that want to come onto the podcast. So again, if you want to let us know, if you're listening to this, tell us if anyone would be interested in hearing us talk about some other fandoms, because Beyond the Real could expand a little bit. I do have other friends and guests that want to come on and talk about other things. And Preston, I know you have a lot of other fandoms that interest you as well. So
Harry Potter.
there is always room for growth.
Yeah, Harry Potter, Doctor Who. I know quite a bit about those. A couple other.
Yeah,
fandoms.
and I know nothing about either one of those.
You know more about like anime and stuff.
That's true. Yeah. Well, my wife does, but yeah. And I have a lot of friends who know a lot about, video games that could come on and talk forever. I do have friends that I want to bring on to talk about Star Wars in their respected field that they, are more experienced with. But yeah, let us know, because I think that could be a fun thing to kind of branch out, have Beyond the Real Star Wars podcast and Beyond the Real, Mass Effect podcast,
Yeah.
or beyond, whatever
I could talk all about Mass
the
Effect.
topic is.
Which,
exactly.
there's a little bit of news about Mass Effect I'm gonna throw in here real quick.
Okay, let's hear it.
EA, which is the owner of BioWare, the makers of Mass Effect, they just had a conference call with investors, and they talked about like these different projects that they're going to be having coming out this year and into next year. And one of them they just called an HD game, and
High definition?
yeah, like a high definition game. And so the theory that people are coming up with means that that's a remaster, right? Like they're just like an HD remaster of an existing game, and everyone's really hoping that it's a remaster of Mass Effect.
That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be a
They
perfect
just
time to jump
remastered-
in. If it does happen, I'm going to force you to play them.
Okay, sounds good. I'll probably do that because I'm interested. It seems like a fun game.
It is.
But what was the one that they just remastered that everyone's talking about?
Resident
My coworker
Evil?
won't shut up about it. What?
Resident Evil.
No, he's well, I have a coworker who's really into video games. A really good friend of mine who I'm gonna bring onto the show sometime to talk about Star Wars video games. But he's really into
Command and Conquer.
Nope. It's onto my Kingdom Hearts, but it's not Kingdom Hearts. It's like half of Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, gosh.
Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy. There you go.
Final Fantasy.
I've never
That's
played
it.
so
Yeah, they remastered that, and apparently it's like huge right now.
Yeah.
So he was chatting to me about that for a while at work, and I was like, I've never played it, so I don't know how to respond to you.
it
but
seems
yes.
super complicated. I've always been hesitant to jump into that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, he's a great guy. Shout out to Spencer if you're listening. I don't think you are, but
Well,
we'll
then
have
he
you on
can't
the
come.
show soon, bud.
He's got to listen to our entire backlog, and we're going to quiz him.
Yeah.
If he wants to be on the show, he has to know.
That's our new qualification for any guests. You have to listen to our entire backlog. It's not hard, people. There's 7 episodes. But speaking of video games, we'll use that to transition into Star Wars conversation again, into another news story, which is Battlefront 2 is no longer getting updates. We got our last one with the Scarif update. And we played a little bit a couple of days ago together.
Yeah. And you saw me get
What did
super salty.
you think of the new... What was that?
You saw me get super salty while we played.
Yeah. Neither one of us had played much in a while, so we weren't very good. So we found ourselves very frustrated with being pretty much last in a lot of the time.
Hey, I was middle. I was in the middle.
You were middle. I was last. And you were top on a couple games once you got a hang of it. You got back into your groove, I felt.
Yeah, but like I said, that was more a factor of the enemy team and not me doing any better. It was just we had easier opponents.
Yeah. No, it was fun. I liked the new skins a lot. The gameplay is pretty much the same.
The Easter egg was fun.
One thing what was that?
The Easter egg was fun.
Oh, the Easter egg. Yes. Yeah. You were able to find that on Takodana.
Yep.
We won't spoil that for anyone who hasn't played, but there is an Easter egg on Takodana. You can go find it. It unlocks a new skin. And yeah, the only thing I wanted to say about it is, man, one, I'm going to miss the game. I mean, I will still play it, but I'm going to miss updates. But boy, do I really wish that you can choose your level before, it puts you on a random map. And the first time I tried playing the update, this was without Preston at that time, but I wanted to play Scarif so bad, and I had to play it through like 6 or 7 different games before I could finally get to Scarif. And I just kept on matchmaking, and then it would pop up the map, and I would quit out, and then matchmake, and then quit out, and matchmake, because I was like, I want to play the new level.
Yeah. Yeah, they really should have added a level selection feature before they stopped updating the game. And I'm not a huge, like, there's people that love this game and play it constantly, and I'm max level on basically everything, but so I have played it a ton. But honestly, my favorite part of the game is just wandering around the environments. It's so cool. Like when in Mandalorian, when they went to the cantina, I knew where they were because I've walked those streets of Tatooine. I know how to go from the little lounge area in Takodana and Maz's castle down to where Rey finds the lightsaber. Like I've walked those paths, and it's super cool to have that experience.
I felt the same way again yesterday when I was watching Revenge of the Sith, when they're on Kashyyyk and that camera comes down onto the beachfront. I was like, I know that beach so well. Like, I could tell you exactly where the Venator Star Destroyers landed. Like, I can show you, like, I know how to navigate those trees. I was like, that's so cool to me how accurate they made the levels in the game based on the footage in the movies. I thought that was really cool.
Another one is Revenge of the Sith. During the Duel of Fates fight, you know exactly where all of that takes place. Like, you've walked that as well. From the moment where...
Are you talking about in Phantom Menace?
What did I say?
Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, I meant Phantom Menace. Yeah, Phantom Menace. Yeah, you can walk through that doorway that Maul opens up and ignites his lightsaber and trace kind of the path back into that little walkway area. It's pretty fun.
Well, what do you think is next for video games?
They did just have an update an update is coming out soon for Fallen Order.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's I don't think there's a ton of new content. It's like some refreshed cosmetics. It didn't seem like it was enough to jump back in for people that have already finished it. For me, I still have not played it, but it's coming to Stadia, and that's where I play most of my video games nowadays. So I'm super excited to get it once it's on that platform. Yeah,
that sounds good. Yeah, I would lend it to you, but I don't have it on physical. I have it on digital. Well, okay. Is there any other news stories that you saw that you felt we need to talk about, or do you want to go ahead and break into Star Wars or into Clone Wars?
Yeah, let's talk about Clone Wars.
Okay, let's do it. Yeah, this is going to be a long episode anyways, but it is our May 4th Revenge of the 5th episode, so...
It can't be too long. I got to get up there and watch that documentary episode.
You do, yeah. And I got to get to playing with my new figures. I had to just show you this real quick. Sorry for the listeners who can't see because we are on a video call.
What's his name? The little flute player from the cantina?
So it says this one here is Barquin Dan, because it's Figrin Dan in the modal nodes. But yeah, this here Bith, I don't know if this is a flute or a saxophone.
Yeah.
It's the tube one with the cord that comes out the top, but it's the full size, like 12-inch doll, basically.
That's a very cool figure.
It's super cool. Like, the dolls I don't usually buy because the dolls usually have really weird head sculpts and like creepy hair that come out of it. But with the Bith, it looks incredible. Like the alien ones look really good. There was an Admiral Akbar one there too that I almost purchased.
Is this a new figure? Let's call
this
it an
is
action
like
figure,
old school,
not a doll.
90s. I know, but it's big enough to be a doll, and it's like...
Oh, was this at the Rogue Toy place?
This was at the Rogue Toys, yeah. So it's a bunch of, old school toys that haven't been opened yet, or some of them have been, but...
How much did that put you back?
This is like $20.
What? That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm headed up to West Valley.
And I feel like at Star Wars Celebration... What was that?
I'm headed up to West Valley right now.
Oh, do it. We need to go. But yeah, I feel like at Celebration, I would have seen something like this, and it would have been like $40. So
yeah.
This says 1998 on here. So this would have come out during the Power of the Force series, which I also bought a Power of the Force Leia because Power of the Force is definitely my favorite line because it's just so funky and funny looking. So
is even Leia pretty buff?
Leia there.
Oh.
Yeah, this one's not as buff as the original one, but yeah, they still made her very much like a He-Man toy. She's a little thinner in the waist, a little bit bustier than, you probably would make Leia. I think they tried to overdo the body figures on that line.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they're a little bit more respectful to them nowadays.
Very cool.
Well, let's do it. Let's get into the Clone Wars. We're going to loop in both episode 11 and 12 together because they came out pretty close to each other over the weekend. So starting off with, what is the name? Shattered.
Shattered. Yeah, I was just looking it up.
Shattered was the name of the first one, and the second one was Victory or Death.
Victory and Death.
Victory and Death. You're right.
Yep.
Sorry. Victory and Death, not Victory or Death. Because there was no choice there. It had to be both.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of want to get your overall reaction to start out with. What did you feel about those episodes in general?
Okay, so Shattered. What happened in Shattered?
So, okay, well, let's go scene by scene. Well, let's break it down. We'll start from the beginning and kind of go through it. So, we start out the episode with Bo-Katan and why do I always blank on her name?
Ahsoka.
Nope.
Maz Kanata.
Nope. Ursa Wren.
Oh, okay.
Bo-Katan and Ursa Wren are bringing Maul to Ahsoka.
Oh, that's right.
Or on board the ship.
Yep, so Maul had been
and he's
captured.
in that box.
And he's in a super cool box. And at first, my wife was like, oh, he's in carbonite. I'm like, no, that's not carbonite.
No, yeah. This was maybe a precursor to it, but it supposedly is meant to subdue Force sensitives.
Well, so I did a little bit of, I actually watched a couple videos about like the history of the Mandalorians and a little bit of just like the canon timeline. And it's really interesting because the Mandalorians were like, they were kind of on their own world doing their own thing. And then they ran into the Jedi Society and they obviously started fighting. And so they developed a bunch of anti-Jedi stuff. And that's why they have jetpacks. That's why they have all the cool technology, is to basically gave themselves force powers with tech. And
right, because there was a great Mandalorian Jedi War.
Yeah.
They spoke about it in Rebels with Sabine and her van braces, or like the gauntlets are designed. The ones that Boba Fett has or other Mandalorians are designed to combat Jedis.
Yeah. So they can't move things with their mind, but they can grapple hook stuff with their wrist and pull it in,
or use a flamethrower, or a rocket.
So this cool box that they put Maul in is like a relic of that war, which apparently was outlawed, but they still had one snuck away, hidden somewhere, just in case.
Yeah, which was good. Ahsoka had to do a couple of things that maybe not. Yes, for sure, we're against the law, but like even against her teachings in order to survive in these episodes, which I thought was really good. But she never broke down to go against her core values. She in this last episode, spoilers, by the way, if you, I should say that now, even though we started going into it already. Major spoilers for the last two episodes of the Clone Wars. If you haven't seen it, probably don't want to listen to the rest of this podcast. But yeah, she never gave in to, harm the clones, even though they were trying to kill her. Like she said, I won't be the one to kill them.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, we're jumping into the last episode here, but I want to say that I was so, I was almost frustrated as I'm like, all these guys are going to die. There's no ships. There's only one ship and Maul took it. They're all going to die. Just start lobbing heads off because this is getting tedious trying to be righteous.
And we'll talk about that a little bit as we get into it. But yeah, I thought that was interesting how she's bending her beliefs a little bit because she's like, they're like, oh, this is outlawed. And she's like, well, we need it. Or later on in the episode, she releases Maul on the ship, which again, probably illegal, but also against her teachings. But she needed it. Like she had to bend a little bit for the greater good, but she never, went over her moral line of what's right and wrong.
Right, kind of a bend without breaking.
Right. She bend without breaking, but she would go against what the Jedi might consider wrong, or what maybe her orders would be, even though she's not a Jedi anymore.
And maybe she learned some of that from the Martez sisters. That there's a gray area that you have to live in when you're.
Possibly, yeah. There's a little bit of a reason for that arc, I guess. So.
I know everyone's kind of making fun of it, saying those were like wasted episodes. I do think one of them was wasted, but for the most part, I do think it was a really neat bridge to show that Ahsoka is willing to kind of bend the rules now.
I agree. I enjoyed them. I make fun of them just because it's a low hanging fruit of a joke there, but it's I do like some of the jokes that people have been making. But yeah, so they bring Maul aboard, and then we kind of get right into it. They are on their way to Coruscant when the big bad happens. Order 66 is put into place. And our guy Rex there has a moment of resistance there.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting.
That was really neat. Well, first, before we get to Rex, we hear voices. We hear Palpatine talking to oh my gosh, Mace Windu, and that whole exchange in Palpatine's office at the window.
You're right. When does that happen? Who hears that?
Ahsoka does. So Ahsoka is kind of standing at the front of the Republic Star Destroyer, and she hears unlimited power, and she kind of gets some snippets of that conversation. And then
this is why I need to rewatch them before we podcast.
Yeah, and then you hear Anakin's voice saying,
once.
"Yeah, you hear Anakin's voice saying, "What have I done?" As he sits down.
That's right, and they used both Matt Lautner and Hayden Christensen's voices for that.
Yeah,
that's
it was
right.
really interesting.
Yeah, that part gave me chills.
Yeah, it was really interesting hearing like the live action voice in the animated series, which is kind of the same. Didn't we hear Ahsoka's voice in Episode 9?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all blurred.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying like Clone Wars is actually as much a part of the films as the films.
The prequels is the films. Yeah. It is the prequels. Yeah. Man, I that's such an interesting point to think about. I'm going to mull on that for weeks now. But yeah, so then we go over to when Order 66 is put into place. Yep. And he resists, and there's that helmet drop that everyone's talking about. Everyone was posting about that for a while. Yeah. That scene where his helmet drops.
And his hands are shaking.
And he's like, I got to kill Ahsoka. And there's that conflict, which is interesting because we don't see that with anybody else.
Nope.
So I'm interested in your opinion on why do you think there was resistance and conflict with Rex, but not for any other trooper, or like there was definitely none for Cody in Episode 3, right? He's just like, oh, okay, shoot that man. Like,
well, and then let me hurry and say something. I watched some compilations of like all the Order 66 happenings at one time that some people had put together on YouTube, and I forgot that Yoda just like flips around and chops off 2 heads immediately.
Oh yeah,
I forgot about that part.
He goes beast mode, and he does it again on Coruscant when they go back to the Jedi Temple in Episode 3. He just starts taking out clones left and right.
Yeah, so
no holding back.
Qualms. Which is a really I saw a Twitter conversation about how Yoda, because the guy that actually animated the Yoda fight between Yoda and Dooku, he kind of posted about it and said, like, I can't believe it's 20 years since I animated this scene. And some people are complaining, like, oh, I can't believe this scene ruins Yoda. He's supposed to be a pacifist and wise. But if you watch, like, he almost exemplified, almost as much as Mace Windu, what was wrong with the Jedi Order. But then he learned, and that's what... He didn't completely learn because he still tried to trick Luke into killing his own father. But I feel like he wisened up a little bit after that whole ordeal.
Well, and it's funny because people always say things like that, like, oh, you've ruined this character because he's supposed to be this. It's like, well, no, this is the creator of Star Wars who is saying this is how he was. But oftentimes when you argue with those people, you have to look back at the originals because apparently the originals are perfect. And if they don't, everything else, has to line up with the originals. But in the originals, Obi-Wan refers to him as a great warrior. And Luke says, I'm looking for a great Jedi warrior. Yeah. And he says, wars do not make one great. And then, so he was a warrior at one point. Yep. And he's the one that's saying, Luke, you got to go kill your dad.
Yep.
Luke's like, maybe there's good in him. He's like, nope, go kill your dad. He is a Jedi. He's a pacifist. But when it comes down to it, Yoda is not afraid to get his hands dirty and do what must be done.
Right.
I even saw this in, again, I watched episode 3 last night, and Mace Windu says, I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi. He says, we need to take Palpatine out of office. The Jedi will have to take control of the Senate in order to have a smooth transition. And you can see it in Mace's face. It lights up a little bit. Like, Mace wants power as well. Mace is not a perfect Jedi. He's also corrupt. And he's thinking, oh, the Jedi can take control of the Senate? Like, awesome, we'll be in charge. And Yoda says, tread lightly, we must. But he doesn't object.
Yep.
Yoda sees that there is something wrong, but he doesn't stop it. He's more of a, we got to be careful, guys. But he's not going to be like, no. We don't want power. We want to be, remain neutral in this. So Yoda's not as perfect as everyone thinks.
And that's why I always go back to my man Qui-Gon Jinn, because Qui-Gon Jinn is like an actual Jedi. He is connected to the Wills. He is one with the Force. Whereas Mace Windu is basically a crusader. He's like a dogmatic crusader that believes that everyone should believe in the same way that he does, and he's willing to force that. That's my view of Mace Windu, which if you can view him as like a righteous crusader, but still a crusader that's willing to use force to make other people change their beliefs or align with his. And then Yoda really is just an enabler and almost like an ineffective leader in a sense. And that's why I think Qui-Gon Jinn was right all along.
But what I like about Yoda is he proves that there's always room for growth.
Yep.
Even the oldest and wisest Jedi had room to grow. And he did. We saw it in episode 8, when he says failure, is the greatest teacher. Because Yoda failed. Yeah. He straight up failed to lead the Jedi into where they need to be. And so did Mace, and so did everyone that was part of that council.
Obi-Wan failed Anakin. Yeah, lots of failure.
Right. And he even had some issues when he was on, Dagobah. He was like, go kill your dad. Go kill Darth Vader. He was wiser, he was calmer, and he was a better Jedi at that point than he was even in the prequels. But he even had growth after he died. And it wasn't until after he died and he was maybe shown the light of everything that he realized, what needed to be done. Yeah. Yoda, I think, is a great way to look at things. Yeah. Even if you're 78 years old, you probably still have some things you need to work on in your life, and you can still become a better person. I just love that about Yoda. Yeah. So I didn't want to crap on him too much because I think he's a great character.
Yeah. He's still a great character. I think Mace Windu is a great character.
People seem to see him in their eyes as like the perfect grandpa, but it's like he had his struggles, and everyone does. Even the greatest masters, have their issues. Yeah. So.
Did we talk about, this is again tangential, but did we talk about in a couple episodes ago how Obi-Wan, that fight on the bridge with Obi-Wan and Anakin?
Yes.
Okay.
We talked about it a little bit.
I can't remember if that was with you or someone else. I talk about Star Wars all the time and I forget if it's recorded or not.
Yeah, we did talk about it during that episode. Okay. Was there something you wanted to say about it?
Well, just that we're like talking about all the Jedi, and I think that the Clone Wars and all the prequels did a fantastic job really understanding who the characters are. That fight on the bridge was good for Obi-Wan. Like, it showed how he was very linear in his thinking, and he wasn't very adaptive where Anakin was. And then we see that hologram conversation between Mace Windu, Yoda, Ahsoka, and they still understand who those people are. Like, Yoda's still sitting back, and Mace Windu's still trying to like force his way into controlling the Senate. I think they did a great job keeping those characters consistent and making it believable.
Yeah, I kind of related to that. Again, when I watched Revenge of the Sith yesterday, I noticed this part where both of the Jedi starfighters land on Grievous's ship, and Obi-Wan jumps out of his cockpit immediately, does a couple flips, lands, and slices up 3 droids. Anakin, who I usually see as the showboat, crashes into a ship, gets out, kind of climbs out, and just like hacks some droids down. And he's not as flippy or whatever as Obi-Wan. And my wife and I were talking about it because she's like, you would think it would be opposite. You would think that Anakin would be the one like, oh, look what I can do, flip around, cut him in half. But it was like, no, Obi-Wan is the one that has the finesse and is very much a Jedi way about it, and flipping and being very light on his feet. And when Anakin gets out, it's very much like Vader. Yeah. It's menacing. He kind of barrels out of his starfighter, holds his blade in a very heavy manner, and just cuts them down without any showboating or anything, because he's like, I'm a scary force of power that's coming at you right now, and you stupid little B-1 battle droid has nothing, there's nothing you can do to survive this moment. So I think it was really cool how George understood, like, he's becoming Vader. He's becoming this heavy, I walk down the hall slowly and I throw the rebels around and I, stab them and I cut them in half, and I don't have to do it quickly because I'm going to do it in my time because I know I'm stronger than you. Yeah. I just thought that was cool.
Yeah, Vader, I don't think you ever see Vader move quickly.
Yeah. Part of it is because of his biology and the fact that he's half cyborg, but part of it is he doesn't need to. Mm-hmm. He's stronger than you. He knows it, and he's going to take his time to kill you. Yeah. So, anyways, we are ranting today, which I love when we do this. But
that's when we get our best theories out there. So
it is. It really is.
So yeah, Shattered.
So apologize if you don't like long episodes to the listeners, but
so we're on Shattered.
Yes.
So I can't remember. I watched both of them almost back to back, so I forget which one leads into the next. But yeah, so Rex, he hesitated, and he didn't just hesitate. Yeah. He said, "Find fives."
Right.
Which
so leads me to my theory. The reason why Rex hesitated and the others didn't, right, is partially because, I mean, we see this with a lot of clones, but I feel like Rex, more than anyone, had a deeper connection to the Jedi than anyone else.
Yep.
Rex had become loyal to Anakin and Ahsoka more so than he was loyal to the Republic.
Yeah.
He even says it in that line in the last episode where he says, I didn't much like being a commander anyways, or he's like, I'm done being a commander. It's like he is loyal to his friends more so than he was loyal to the Republic, which the other clones weren't so much. They had a deeper connection, I felt.
Well, and I feel like, I think you're right there. The clones were loyal to their Jedi commanders as commanders. It was like a work relationship, and they were more loyal to the Republic and their brothers, whereas Rex he was like a friend to Anakin and almost like an uncle to Ahsoka, because he watched her grow up. And so I think that almost familial relationship,
familiarized,
is what also gave him some pause.
Familial,
like family.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we've had this discussion on the podcast before about the difference between Cody's and Obi-Wan's relationship and Rex and Skywalker's relationship. That they were much closer, and he treated them more like a friend than a coworker. And so that definitely probably that's how theories go. They're definitely probably, but it probably had a factor into why he hesitated. The other kind of pillar of that theory I have is he was aware of that there was something weird about the inhibitor trip because of fives. Yep. He knew there was something a little janky going on with that, and so when that switch flipped, there was probably something in his brain was like, oh, is this it? Is this the thing that, was weird? And so before he fully turned over to the dark side, if you will, or Order 66, his brain was like, remember there was something weird? And then, it flipped eventually, and he started to try to kill Ahsoka.
Yeah. So he gave her just enough warning so that she could defend herself, and then she jumped up on that little table and started deflecting she was completely surrounded by clones. She starts deflecting those blasters straight up, which was super cool. Then jumped up through the hole that the blasts created, which I thought was like the coolest thing ever. It's the second coolest thing, because there's another cool moment in the last episode, which was even cooler.
This is exactly what I was going to talk about. I would say let's talk about it real quick because we're kind of all over the place. We're not necessarily doing an order, but yeah, when she takes her 2 lightsabers, is that what you're talking about? Yeah. so tell the audience what you're talking about because I love that part so much.
So at the in the last episode, close to the very end, they're like completely surrounded and they're almost fighting on 2 levels, and the droids are helping like move clone troopers up and down, and so they're up on the upper level, and she throws her saber outwards, and they stick into the ground, and then she uses the force to spin them around her, cutting the floor from underneath both her and Rex.
So cool.
And then, so then they just fall like 100 feet, and it didn't look like she slowed that plate down that they were standing on, and Rex's legs had to have been broken, right?
Okay, I was thinking the same thing too, because like Ahsoka could stop herself, but Rex would have just been like crack.
Well, and that's what happened. Like she landed in like a hero pose, sabers out, ready to go, and he just like flunk, like turned into a puddle on the ground.
Yeah. Oh. But yeah, that's one of those conventions in Star Wars you have to kind of overlook. Like, yeah, probably wouldn't survive that, but that's okay. Maybe that armor is much more absorbent than we know.
Yeah. Well, and another thing I was thinking about is all these other troopers were like getting one shot, and that's what always happens. You get hit once and you die if you're not a named character. But Rex got shot like 3 times and he didn't die.
Yeah.
He got like shot in the shoulder, and then I think Ahsoka got shot in the arm, but it didn't even leave a mark. And so there's a little bit of plot armor, but a
little bit.
Yeah, they had to make a couple
of
the
so
shots
good
land.
That we don't care. Yeah. So I kind of want to go through an overview because we are taking up a lot of time. But
well, then
in order to,
are you going to talk about like Ahsoka going to investigate 5s?
Right. So we get Ahsoka investigating 5s, where she learns kind of about the inhibitor chip. She doesn't fully find out everything, but she does know that the chip is what's causing it, and that she needs to remove it from Rex.
And then she goes and gets her droids. I don't know all their names, like GG, or I can't remember.
R7 and Cheap, which is a chopper style droid.
Yeah.
It was another C. What do they call it? C unit or something like that.
Which
so,
let me quickly insert something here. That interview that they had with Dave Filoni and George Lucas last week on the Star Wars show, they asked, and Dave Filoni couldn't name his favorite episode, but George knew exactly what his favorite episode was, and it's the one with those droids out in the wilderness.
And I thought the same thing, actually, after seeing that interview, is like, okay, here's Dave Filoni getting in the little droid episode in for him, the droid army, if you will. Well, not the droid army, but the astromech army coming in to help. Which I loved that. I loved everything about the droids in these 2 episodes.
The end.
And till the end, really bummed out, man. That was sad when they get killed, like, because they're loyal. They're loyal to Ahsoka, not the Republic, because they're like, Ahsoka has been nice to us. Yeah. Like, we're going to go ahead and do everything. And I did hear on another podcast earlier that was discussing this episode how Ahsoka, every time she gets them to do something, she doesn't tell them. She asks them. Yeah. She's like, I need you one more time, friends. Like, can you help me out? Will you please do this? And they're like, yeah, we'll do this for you. Like, it's not a command like, oh, I'm the organic, you're the robot, go do it. Yep. It's the, please help me. I need you guys because everyone in here is trying to kill me, except for maybe Maul, who probably would kill me if he got the chance. But right now he's just wreaking havoc. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about Maul real quick.
Yeah. Well, I saw a comment saying that this is the second time that Sam Witwer has pulled down a Star Destroyer.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. That's the first thing I saw too. Is this was very reminiscent of Starkiller as he's pulling in that hyperdrive. That part was so cool, man.
Of course, Starkiller just like straight up pulled the whole thing down, whereas Maul just pulled the hyperdrive apart. Super cool.
Well, and Ahsoka kind of pulled a Starkiller when he's driving off in the shuttle and she's holding it back. Yep. And I was like, is there going to be a bolt of lightning that comes from her hand and explodes it?
I'm so glad there wasn't.
Okay. Can I go on a quick rant? And I apologize again about episode 9. So I watched it again last night. And so I had this discussion with my wife again because I was perplexed by it. She's holding the transport that supposedly has Chewie on it, right?
Yep.
Or that we think has Chewie on it.
Yep.
A bolt of lightning is released from her hand, and it explodes. The whole thing just shatters into a million pieces.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm thinking, wow, the last time we saw Force lightning, it was the Emperor using it on Luke, and it made him curl up into a ball and go ah. And the time before that, when we see it, it was reflected back onto his face, and it made his face burn and be really hot, and he was going, oh! But it never made anything completely explode from the inside out. Yeah. And Jess, my wife's name is Jess, and she was saying, well, maybe it's because it was a ship and it's electronic, right? Or it's the fuel or whatever was reacted, and that's what caused it to blow up. And I said, yeah, no, that makes a little bit of sense. But I would see an electric current short it out more so than make it explode. So I'm like, yeah, that can be explained away. Well, an hour and 10 minutes later, or whatever it is in the movie, we see the Emperor, who is as more powerful than he's ever been before, shooting huge gusts of lightning into the sky at all of the good guy ships. And what happens? All of their engines start shorting out and their monitors start going crazy and they all start falling from the sky. And I'm like, not a single one of those ships explodes out of thin air like the time when she does it to the bad guy ship. But because it's all the good guys, they just start falling from the sky when hit by the lightning. That's how filmmaking goes. It's plot armor, and I'm not mad about it. I just thought it was a funny observation. I'm not going to be that guy. Well, it doesn't make any sense, and whatever. But
yeah, well, it's interesting that it all happens within the same film, because there are some things that you can nitpick, but it's like, oh, in this film it works this way, in that film it works a different way. But this is within the same film.
Yeah. I don't know. I hate when people nitpick like little plot things like that. So I'm not gonna spend too much energy being upset about it. I just thought it was funny. But if I keep going on what the Force lightning will do to a certain ship, it's like I need to get more of a life if that's my biggest worry.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was super cool. So yeah, the Star Destroyer starts falling because he's ripped the hyperdrive out, which pulls him out of hyperspace. And that shot of them falling out of hyperspace was so cool. So cool.
Okay, I do. We've touched on a lot of it. I do want to bring back up a little bit to where she does let Maul out.
Yeah.
And I love the little exchange they have when he says, are you going to give me a lightsaber? Are you going to give me a fighting chance? Yeah. And she goes, I'm not rooting for you. Like, I love that. Yeah. She's like, I'm not wanting you to go kill everybody. I just need you to be my distraction so I can survive and I can get this chip out of Rex's brain. Yeah. Like, I love that. Like
go cause
like, I don't
some chaos.
think I'm on your side now.
Yeah, go cause some chaos, but I hope you die in the midst of it.
Right, exactly. And she, there was a part where they were fighting again, where I thought she would have killed him if she had a chance. I knew she wouldn't because we know his fate. Yeah. But it's like she seemed like she had the intent to kill. Yeah. Like she wasn't going to kill the clones. She said she wouldn't by her hand, but she was like, I'll kill Maul. This guy has deserved this. He's not acting out of character the way the clones are. Yeah. This guy has created enough problems, and if I can't capture him, I'm going to kill him. Luckily for us, that doesn't happen, and we get to see them all again. But yeah, man, these two episodes so heavy. I do want to talk about Jesse a little bit. Jesse.
Oh yeah,
he's the clone with the big tattoo and the.
So real quick. Let me just say that the rest of this episode is mostly just them escaping and getting shot at. That's like the majority of it. There's
a lot of that. A lot of good action in here. That's why, I kind of was skipping over that. Okay. We can talk about the I'm one with the Force. The Force is with me.
Let's quickly talk about that. So the medic droid the scan isn't working. They can't find the chip, and so she starts the Chira Inway chant of I'm one with the Force is with me, and then she's like in his brain, and so he starts chanting it, and I took that as he's not saying it out of his own will. It's almost like she's making him say that, or like they're so
she's connected to him.
Yeah, they're so connected that he's repeating it with her, and then they find
I like
the
that
chip.
theory. How did you feel about that being used? that Rogue One reference?
I like Chirrut Inway, but it's not like he's not like my favorite character, so I was kind of just ambivalent to it.
We haven't really heard it before besides in Rogue One. It might be one other place it's used, but I don't necessarily think of that as something that the Jedi do often. Like, that's not a Jedi, because I mean, sure, it wasn't a Jedi.
No, it's not a Jedi.
So that's not like a Jedi, ritual. I almost picture that as like a Force prayer, if that makes sense.
I think it's more of almost like, maybe it's like the prayer that comes to Force sensitives when they need to pull from the Force an extraordinary amount. That's kind of how I took it, is that this is almost something that's like innate in the Force, and she didn't learn it from the Jedi.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Like, she might have learned that outside, because the Jedi, I feel like, teach you how to draw from the Force within, where I feel like other members of society who maybe believe in the Force are like, I am not a wielder, but I still am going to try to call upon it to be with me, It's almost like Rey in The Last Jedi when she's saying, be with me, be with me. It's kind of that same vein where, maybe I'm not a Force wielder, even though Ahsoka is, but she's like, this is my last ditch effort. I'm going to pray to the Force. Like, if it's within your will to make this happen, please make it happen, type of thing. So, I don't know. I think it's interesting. If you're a, religious person or not, you can, see how that can be comforting to somebody who's trying to call upon the Force. So, yeah, it's Force has always been a religion.
Yeah.
Even though it's a cosmic thing. So, yeah.
And then Jesse.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Jesse a little bit because his character is so great, because we see him from the beginning of the Clone Wars all the way till the end. And I like how he has become the embodiment of the Empire by the end, because he has that pretty much almost Imperial logo of the Republic tattooed onto his forehead and on his helmet. And so when they have their exchange, I like how Rex is like, oh, semantics, she's not a Jedi. Like, think it through. He's just like, no, we have our orders. Like, I have been your friend, but I am the representation of the turn to the evil. Yep. This is now what it is. This is the Empire. I am the Empire. And I just love that last shot after she buries the bodies, and the fact that she went through and buried them all, it broke my heart. It was so incredible.
Well, both her and Rex.
And she puts all their helmets on. Both her and Rex, they put all their helmets on, and it's like, okay, you now have him in the foreground. Like, this is the Empire, and we're burying it. I don't know. I loved it.
Yeah.
I also do want to say how interesting and ironic it was that she's being attacked by all these clones that have her face on their helmet.
I said the exact same thing as we watched it.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got Jesse who's leading them and who has the symbol of evil in the galaxy now. And all of her faces are all trying to take him out.
Yep. Like, she's seeing herself reflected back in like this twisted form.
Yeah. And she doesn't want to hurt him, but she kind of has to. So.
Yep. So they stun everybody. And that was the point when there was like the big action scene, and we know that the ship is going down. It's crashing into that moon. And I just wanted, I was like almost getting frustrated. I'm like, just lob some heads off and get going, because you need to get out of here already. But she didn't. And so
I'm glad she didn't. I like that landing scene. I thought that was really cool with the Y-wing.
Yeah, the Y-wing kind of falling and getting into the ship scene was pretty cool.
I was half expecting Chopper to be in that Y-wing.
That would have been kind of cool. And then that would have been really cool. And then they land, then they go through and it kind of cuts ahead. I would imagine at least like a day or two after burying as many clone troopers as I could find.
She's wearing her little cloak thing, which always makes her look like a wise sage when she does that, which is kind of always what she wears right before she disappears.
Yeah, she's wearing her cloak, which was super cool. It reminded me of Rebels and Fulcrum. And then she drops her lightsaber.
Yeah.
Yeah, she kind of,
which conflicts with the Ahsoka novel, but that's kind of been thrown out the window at this point, so I don't really care.
Yeah, so she drops that, and then it cuts to like I think the most powerful scene of almost any Star Wars. At the very
You're talking about the very end? Oh yeah, yeah. Let's. Ooh, that was so good. Let's get into. Okay, before we get into that, I do want to ask, what planet do you think? Or it was a moon,
moon.
but do we know where it was? Did they ever say? Did you catch that?
I didn't hear anything. No, the only thing I heard was the moon. Like,
yeah, I don't think we have a name for it yet.
We're in the gravitational pull of that moon, is all he said.
Yeah. Somewhere between where they were, or between Mandalore and Coruscant. But.
Yeah, so the final scene, because it was kind of randomly, they were kind of randomly pulled out of hyperspace by Maul, so not really sure where they were. But the final scene is I think it starts with a close up of a trooper helmet, and I'm like, oh wait a second, that's a stormtrooper, that's not a clone trooper.
Well, it was a snow trooper.
It was a snow trooper, yeah. So I'm like,
yeah,
oh, we're
I thought that
Fallen
would too.
Empire.
I was like, oh, what? Yeah.
Yeah, so we start with a snow trooper, and so that like is a big giveaway that we've jumped ahead because we're no longer with clones. We're now with stormtroopers, and it kind of shows them scouring the snow, kind of like we see in them scouring the dunes of Tatooine, but it's them in the snow, and then you see Vader walking up, and he gets up to, is it Jesse's helmet?
No, it's just a random Ahsoka helmet.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's
pretty
right.
sure that's in
right.
the
It wasn't a
snow.
Ahsoka helmet.
Yeah.
It was just kind of faded. Which is that the first time we've seen? That's the only time we see Vader in Clone Wars in that Clone Wars style, right?
Oh yeah. And he looked awesome.
He did.
I think he looked better than he did in Rebels for sure.
He was a little bit more thin and drawn out than he was in Rebels. I felt like.
Well, Rebels he was like taller. Like I felt like he had an elongated like eyebrows.
Well, that's because
and
Rebels
face.
Draws heavily from Ralph McQuarrie, and that's what he looked like from Ralph McQuarrie.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, then he finds Ahsoka's saber that she dropped, and he ignites it and kind of just stands there.
The saber that he gave her.
Yeah.
With the crystal he gave her. Yeah.
And to me, this it symbolized, like, it made me realize the implication is that he went and looked for her. Even as Vader, he went and looked for Ahsoka and found the ship and found her lightsaber.
Here's my question. Do you think that was him going, I'm curious what happened to Ahsoka, because he knew she was out in Mandalore or whatever, and that he was supposed to come back with Maul, and she was like, I'm curious what happened to my old apprentice? Or do you think it was, I'm detached from that now, and the Emperor has sent me here to clean up any mess, like I'm sent to hunt Ahsoka? How do you feel that went down?
So I can't remember what comic book it is. Maybe it's the one with Dr. Aphra, but
there's a lot of them. But
yeah. So kind of in the canon that I've read, Sidious isn't always on Vader all the time. Like Vader has time that he can just spend on his own pursuits. So in my mind, this is Vader with his own pursuit looking for Ahsoka, and there was a shot there where you can see through the red lens of his helmet, and you can see his eye. And every time that you see his eye, like in Rebels, when you see his eye through the gouge in his helmet, that's kind of like an indication that it's Anakin poking through.
Yeah.
That's what I took from it. It's Anakin's poking through. This is Anakin coming to find his old friend. Maybe he's feeling lonely or something, that he needs an ally, and
part of
the good is he's still fighting that good that's in him.
Yeah. Part of the way I saw it was, I mean, I definitely think that she left her lightsaber there to try to signify that she was dead, right? Like that was her to be like, okay, if the Empire comes to look for the crash scene, or she doesn't even know they're Empire at that point, she just knows that Order 66 happened. She didn't really know what happened in the Senate, but she's like, if they come looking for me, they'll see my lightsaber and assume I'm dead. And I think that when he sees it, his first instinct might be like, oh no, Ahsoka's died alongside with them. But I'm sure he sees it and he can sense that she's still alive somewhere. And I think that he was sent there to hunt her down, and he sees this and he goes, okay, I have to find her and kill her because that's my job, to kill all the Jedi. But I'm sure part of him goes, this is evidence enough that she is dead, and he's like, I'm going to leave it be. He turns on the lightsaber, he's like, I'm going to put this to rest. I maybe have this feeling that she's still out there, but I'm not going to pursue it.
Yeah.
because maybe he thinks that she's not going to cause any harm, or I don't know what it is. Obi-Wan, he still has hatred towards, because he's screaming at him, you know, and he cuts his legs and his arm off, and he's thinking, okay, I'm going to find Obi-Wan someday and I'm going to kill him. But with Ahsoka, he's like, if I find her, I might have to do what I have to do and kill her because that's my job, but I'm not going to pursue it because she's done nothing to Anakin. He has no ill feelings towards her because she wasn't around when everything crumbled around him. And then I think when he looks up and sees that bird again, the owl, that's kind of the symbol of Ahsoka now. I think that's when he kind of is just like, to him, maybe it was like she lives, but she doesn't have to. In the eyes of the Emperor, I can tell the Empire that she's dead.
Yeah, I really like that. I hadn't thought
because
of it
in
that
Rebels, when he sees her, he says, the apprentice lives, but he doesn't seem all that surprised. It's more just like oh, okay, I see you now. Now I have to do something about it. Now I have to fight you.
Does he
because
offer,
you've revealed yourself?
In Rebels, when they meet on where I forget the name of that planet.
Malice. No.
Yeah, I knew it started with an M.
No, it's Moraban.
Moraban. Yeah. When they meet there, does he ever offer like, "Hey, come join me"? Or does he just?
I can't remember. It's been so long
I'll have
since
to
I've
rewatch
seen
that.
it.
That's an amazing couple of episodes on Malice.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I feel like he just tries to kill her. I don't think it is. There is a join me moment.
Okay. And I just realized that's like the first time that Ahsoka sees Anakin or Vader, but it's also, doesn't she see Maul at that Sith temple as well? Mm-hmm. It's probably the first time she's seen him since this moment as well. Interesting.
Exactly.
I'm gonna have to rewatch that now that I know kind of the last time we saw each other.
Yeah, I need to rewatch Rebels too.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah, her whole past is dug up.
When she dropped her lightsaber, my thought was that it was more of just like, I'm leaving this behind, and I'm gonna start a new life. I didn't see it as like her trying to trick anyone, but I think you're totally right, and definitely, I think you're totally right with what Vader was thinking, in that moment.
One thing I want to talk about real quick, in relation to Rebels, because it made me think of it. This kind of goes back to the Siege of Mandalore episode, which I can't remember the name. The Phantom Apprentice, which in my opinion is the greatest episode in Star Wars TV, probably. That and Twin Suns from Rebels, but definitely my favorite of all of Clone Wars, where he's talking about this Phantom Apprentice, which is, I believe, is Anakin. He's saying that there's this apprentice that named Skywalker that has been the plan the whole time to replace Dooku, and that he's the one to bring destruction and all blah 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 blah. In Rebels, when Maul meets Vader for the first time, he's like scared of him.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do. Yep.
Where like he shows up and he just like GTFOs, like he's just like, I'm not gonna mess with this guy, and it's just interesting connection to see because he knew back in Clone Wars, he's like, this is the guy that my master was putting everything on.
Yeah.
Like, this was the prophesied chosen one, but opposite of what you think. This is the guy I don't want to mess with because I know he is more powerful than I ever will be or anyone ever has been, and I'm not going to mess with him. And I just think that they complement each other so well between that episode and Rebels and that episode in Clone Wars where you can feel his fear because you know that Maul has fear for Sidious. Yep. And so it's like, if this is the one that Sidious has kept around longer than any other apprentice, this is the guy to be, a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very good observation.
Yeah. Well, we should probably wrap it up. I can see it's getting really dark in your basement there on our
I'm looking at myself in my little camera, and it's just like a face floating in the darkness.
Okay, don't take this the wrong way, but you know who you look like in the dark?
No.
You know who Post Malone is?
I do.
You kind of look like Post Malone a little bit, minus all the face tattoos. Not so much now, but like maybe 10 minutes ago when there was a little bit more light. It was just, I don't know what it was. It just reminded me of him. You have similar mustaches, I think.
Yeah. No, hey, his mustache is terrible. Mine's not great, but it's...
Yeah, it actually is. Yours is much better. You have a pretty solid beard.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's going to be it for us tonight, folks. Thanks so much for listening if you did. We have a couple listeners. I was looking at our stats, and I think we have 82 plays across all episodes so far.
That's
so
pretty good.
I think this is episode 8, so that's averaging about 10 an episode. Not bad, I guess. But yeah, thanks to anyone who is listening out there. Come talk to us. We're bored. We're wanting to discuss Star Wars. Like Preston said, you're discussing Star Wars all day, every day. If you want to join in on that conversation, just let us know. Email us at beyondtherealpod@gmail.com, or hit us up on Twitter or Facebook at BTR Star Wars. You can comment on any of our YouTube channels. Got a couple up there, Beyond the Real Pod on YouTube. Or however you want to get a hold of us. If you want to send a hawk, tie a letter to a hawk or a carrier or messenger pigeon, I'm sure they'll find us. So,
okay, I just want
anything you want to add, Preston?
Just one last thing. Just a funny story that I wanted to share with as many people as I can. Did you see this story about a 5-year-old kid that was driving on the freeway here in Utah?
No, what?
Yeah. So it's the big story of today.
On the freeway?
I think it was like this morning or maybe yesterday. This officer pulled over a car because it was weaving around kind of slowly. It was kind of like weaving in and out of lanes. And it was a kid. It was a 5-year-old kid that said that he was driving to his sister's house in California. And when he got there, he wanted to buy a Lamborghini. And he showed the officer his money and he had $3.
Oh, wow. That'll get you, Lambo. What? How did he reach the pedals?
He's a really big kid.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh man.
He had to scoot down, but he was able to do it. Just a funny story hilarious. I wanted to share to close off the episode.
Boy, man, when I was 5 years old, I couldn't reach the bottom of my chair. I was so tiny.
My 6-year-old, he's a pretty small kid, but he definitely can't reach the pedals and see over the steering wheel.
Oh man, that is hilarious. Yeah. Well, I'll have to look up that story on KSL or something. So. Hey, and just if there are any Utah local listeners out there, if you want to add to the conversation, we're going to start having guests on soon. So if you think you want to, come talk to us, reach out to us, and we can maybe make that work. Yep. So there's a Utah fan Facebook group cool. for Star Wars fans. Maybe about posting the link and just say, hey, if anyone wants to listen to a local podcast, we're here.
Support local.
Cool. Yeah, support local. Well, thanks again for listening, guys. And May the 4th and the 5th and the 6th, whatever it might be when you're listening to this, be with you. All right. Take care. Bye.